So you had the Pentagon exempts Ukraine operations from potential government shutdown. CJ, I don't know if you remember this, but it was months ago, very long time ago. Remember the last time they had the government shutdown drama? And I explained to you guys how that political drama is bullshit. No, oh no, the government shut down. Oh my God, we gotta do something. Oh no, we gotta cut benefits to the poor. No, we can't cut benefits for the poor. No, man, we have to. Oh, I guess we have to. We gotta cut benefits for the poor. Damn, government not shut down now. Unfortunately, we gotta cut benefits for the poor. There's nothing that we can do. That's how it always goes. It always go that way, right? They do political theater to justify the austerity economic that they're gonna implement. The result is always gonna be the same. They just gotta do the theater. They gotta do the dance. So you guys think there's some real
both sides. Hey, bro, government shutdown is code for y'all get y'all speech writers together, man. It's about that time of the year. We got to punish people. It happened in 2013. I think that was 2018. I think was the longest. No, was it 2018 or 2013? With 34 days? Was that 2018? I think that might have been 2018. But that was over the wall and over the Dreamers Act. I don't know if y'all remember that. Yeah, like it was the same song and dance, but in reality, it had nothing to do with either, if that makes sense. Like they were saying it was about the Dreamers Act, they were saying it was about Trump's wall, but it was never really about either of those things. It was midterms. That's what it was about.
How is this even constitutional? I don't. So apparently, and this is what I read up on Pentagon. They over accounted for billions of dollars in their budgeting, so they used the extra money that they gave themselves to do this. Like, how is this even legal? This is another example how laws and shit they're not really real. The ruling class do what they want.
They learn how to audit all of a sudden. They learn how to audit themselves finally. That's crazy. So they went from when they were audited by the government, like they were like trillions of dollars in debt. Like y'all don't got no extra fucking money. You can't have a Bank of America account with negative $100 and then a Chase account with 25 in it and be like, damn, I just came up $25. Like that's not how that shit works.
I think you know how they never pass audits. I think they have secret stashes of money like this everywhere. Like they can just magically. Because they have to have a contingency plan for if somebody really comes into power or enough people come into power to where they're voting against their weapons plans. They got to have a contingency plan for that, and that's this. They got money all over the places, man. We don't know, like, where'd this come from? But magically, you can't tell us, you can't send us the rest of our money, the $2,000 checks you owe us.
Oh man!
But you can find money for this.
Right, TJ, why you bring it up?
In the cushions. Go ahead.
Why you bring that up, TJ?
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had to pull it up again. Listen to this nonsense, right? And this is how they justify funding the Ukraine despite the government shutdown. So the $325 million is being pulled from funds that became available after the Pentagon said it's overvalued previous arms shipments to Ukraine. An accounting error that freed up an additional $6.2 billion. So what they say is we overvalued the amount of money that we sent them, so they gave us enough money so we can send more. You guys see how the rules mean fucking nothing?
So really quick. Overvalued.
We were going to overcharge you for this, but we're just going to charge you regular price now so we can include some more stuff.
So they already spent but it sounds like they already spent the money.
Oh God.
So I guess but basically what they're saying is like, oh, we had already spent the money the last time, so this time we were expecting to spend the same, but they said, nah, we'll give you a discount this time. Is that what the fuck just happened?
Pretty much.
So instead of going to get y'all money back from these defense contractors who obviously do work in the Pentagon, like y'all gonna give them more money? How do you overvalue something? The Pentagon's confusing because how do you overvalue something? You working with these companies non-stop, bro. Non-stop. And you ain't do a little quick search. Hey man, let me get this. Like, get numbers on. There are people that are dedicated to crunching these numbers, and y'all fucked up and
they made a mistake.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
If you believe that you're the biggest rube out there, here's Justin Amash. Even if Congress doesn't appropriate money, the Pentagon will keep funding Ukraine. As I said, we do not have a representative government. We have not had one in a while. We had an oligarchy with an ornamentation of a representative government. Absolutely well said, Justin. Once again, the only bone I have to pick with libertarians. I'm sorry, I can't help but be an asshole. But what do you think is the end result of unchecked capitalism? The people who have capital become more powerful than government agency and government themselves. Hence, government become captured, and then the government doesn't work for people no more. That's the end result of late-stage capitalism. But anyway, that's a great statement. I don't want to pick a fight. That's a good statement.
Unchecked capitalism. I feel like I should say that because I don't describe myself as a communist or a socialist, so I still think it's important for me. There's no such thing as unchecked capitalism. There's only capitalism. This is the way it's always been. I need y'all to understand that. Stop with this is crony capitalism. No, you literally cannot give me another example in history where capitalism did not function this way. And therefore, it is the norm, not the exception. It's time to accept that and move on.
Here's more on the funding of Ukraine and the issue that they're having. Who do we have come to town? Not Santa Claus, but we have the next best thing. They call him Zelensky. He came to town for trying to get some gifts. Usually Santa Claus comes bearing gifts, but he was coming looking for some money gifts, looking for some cash, some straight dough. And all of his friends, Niko and Nick, all of his friends came out. All of his big friends came out in support on all of the networks. Even you're talking about the Jay-Z and Beyonce of the establishment. Anthony Blinken showing up on Morning Joe is kind of a big deal, big enough for even Alan Greenspan's wife, you know her as Andrea Mitchell, to show up specifically for this interview too. So they even she had to wake up too. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is exactly why we do propaganda report on Morning Joe. We told you guys, Morning Joe is where you go to hear the talking points of the establishment. When you want to know what the political direction the establishment is going, you go to Morning Joe. They get all the big gets. And
you'll see it repeated. Remember whenever Morning Joe started questioning Joe Biden's age? Yeah. And then what do you start seeing after that?
Yep.
All the rest of the show started doing the same thing.
Yeah, well said, CJ. We can continue.
All right, so I queued it up right in the beginning. We're not going to watch all of it, but we're just going to watch the points that zero in on Ukraine funny. This first segment that we're going to watch is about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Let's watch. I'm sorry, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Let's watch.
Foreign country will take his message to Washington to meet with President Joe Biden and members of Congress. Let's bring in United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Also joining the table, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent and host of Andrea Mitchell Reports.
This is a big day.
Andrea Mitchell is with us as well.
Mr. Secretary, great to have you with us. So where do we stand right now in terms of Washington supporting Kyiv? Do you think you still have enough Republicans in the House and Senate to keep this country united in its pushback against Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion?
Joe, first, every single time I hear that shit, bro.
We all had something to say at the same time.
We ain't all lived through Iraq, and Afghanistan for that matter. But
go ahead. Let me chime in right here. What I was gonna say, and then I'll pass to both of you if you had something to say here. What I was gonna say is, you're talking. Now we've said this. I want to reiterate it. Morning Joe, the donors watch Morning Joe. The people who really the movers and shakers, the deep state. This is the show that they watch is Morning Joe. This is why even for Anthony Blinken, this nigga. He gets in front of diplomats all over the world. Doesn't he look nervous right here? He's like, man, I got a lot of selling to do right here. Yeah, he's like, Republicans ain't for this shit. I got some serious selling to do.
And he's looking for his next contracting job in the civilian world. You know that he looking for that too, because he might not.
Yeah, that's true.
The way things are looking, he might not be Secretary Blinken. He might be Mr. Blinken in a couple years. So he auditioned it too.
That's a good point, CJ, because Blinken knows they are watching, so this is a big moment. That's why he had this.
Like lights, camera, action. Let's see how he does. Go ahead, Nick. Then I'll play.
Yeah, and you guys see how he says Putin's illegal invasion as opposed to illegal invasion. And remember when Anderson Cooper was pressed on this, and he said, when he was asked about what about the invasion of Iraq, he the invasion of Iraq, they're not the same as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, even though millions of dead Iraqis. Yeah, so you got
planes involved. We had to cross the ocean. What you mean?
It's a deeply disturbing ideology that our wars are good. The lives of these Ukrainians are somehow way more valuable than the lives of Iraqi kids, Iranian kids, and many others. But anyway, we can continue.
First, great to see you. Mika, great to see you. And really great to be here this morning. Look, the hallmark of this effort to support Ukraine has been bipartisan support. And we've seen that from day one. Conversations I've had with leaders in Congress, including Republican leaders in recent days, shows that support remains strong.
I'm going to say this. Ask yourself, do you think he's talking to Morning Joe, or do you think he's talking to a larger audience of donors? Look at who he's talking to, how he's phrasing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think as President Zelensky has an opportunity to come to Washington to make his case directly to folks in Congress, I think you'll see that support continue to be manifested. And it is so vital that we continue to back the Ukrainians the way we have. And by the way, not just us, we have dozens of other countries doing the same thing. The stakes are extraordinarily high.
Say the magic word.
We're here in the
NATO. NATO. He can't say it. He's like, we have dozens of other countries. He had to say it because he's about to say we have the rest of NATO. Yeah. Well,
I forget it because it's so long ago. This place came together.
That's not me. That's the thing is for whatever reason.
Also, I think it's important to say that throughout all these conversations regarding Ukraine,
and the basic idea was countries need to come together.
Clear that they are going out of their way to not mention NATO. They go out of their way to not mention it. So there's a reason for that, because they don't want people to associate NATO with this war because it's NATO's war.
Unprovoked invasion. That's the term they want you to memorize.
Illegal invasion.
Together, agree on certain rules, how they're going to operate and how they're going to relate to each other to make sure we don't have another world war. And a big part of that was saying, and it's right there in the UN Charter, that you've got to respect another country's sovereignty. It's territorial. You can't just go in, country.
Oh shit! Oh my god! Oh my! Oh,
bro, see, I couldn't be at that table. If I'm at that table, I'll get fired that day. I will start laughing.
Bro, I would have got. Don't let me be behind the camera. I'm like, I would have.
What did you say? You'd be like, oh, my mic. Mic check. Mic check. The mics aren't working. I think he just said he is. Mics aren't working.
Here's all my stuff.
All right, let's try to get through past that part.
My bad, bro.
Hey, this is Comedy Central. That's the funniest shit I ever heard.
Bro, it reads like a Comedy Central skit, bro. What?
All right.
From the map, exactly what Putin has tried to do and failed to do in Ukraine. If we allow that to go forward with impunity, if we allow Putin to get away with it, then it is open season for any would-be aggressor anywhere in the world. They're all watching, and they're saying, if he can do it, I can do it. That's a world full of conflict. That's a world full of hurt. It's a world we don't want to be in. So I think the stakes are clear. The interest is clear. And then, of course, there's a profound human dimension that I know touches lots of Americans.
And that was just the first point, the point about
I want you guys
UN
to reconcile this
sovereignty that you
CJ,
made.
So this is the argument they use. They're to tell people, to get people to care about the Ukraine war, and I know you guys seen it as well, Niko and CJ. They said, we don't stop Russia here, it will lead to never-ending war, because then they will wage war against Europe, then they can wage war against the United States. But didn't y'all just say that Russia was losing to Ukraine? So let me get this right. Russia has this pathetic, and now this is according to Anthony Blinken, the United States propaganda machine. According to the United States propaganda machine, the Russian military has been exposed as weak and ineffective. They can't even beat Ukraine, but somehow they're also a giant threat that can destroy Europe and the United States. You guys see the propaganda technique of our enemy is extremely weak, but at the same time, all powerful and unstoppable.
You know what's even more interesting? Y'all got 12 countries giving weapons and arms and money to one country, and Russia is like this with one hand tied behind their back. Like, 12 billion gone, 300 million gone. So go, y'all want some more money? Go ahead, send us some more money. Send us some more, please. Like,
and isn't the best way?
Y'all have 12 countries funneling. Don't forget about the International Legion, because Ukraine has international soldiers that are actually from NATO powers. They just hide behind that name so that they don't actually have to report the deaths of the people who are the veterans from other countries. But like, they have other fighters from other nations in that country as well, along with billions of dollars from multiple nations And Russia's like, yeah, we're just kind of stringing them along till they get tired of shit because we're not going to get tired of it. We're fine. We're cool.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to say before we get back to the video, because this must be said, because this is the leading talking point right now, fam. The leading one. That's why I had to pause it here. If you want to stop never-ending war and aggressive Russia, you negotiate with them and create a buffer state out of Ukraine like you had in the status quo for the last few decades. So what he's not telling people is that this is a war in order to stabilize NATO encroachment. It's not a defensive war. So if
also,
you
literally,
win
Russia's
in
never
a
invaded
war,
another country ever, if in my estimation, like not ever in the last since actually post-Bolshevik Revolution and even a little bit before that, Russia never invaded another nation in like post-USSR. So I don't understand where that point's coming because they want people to believe that's something that's constantly percolating in the mind of Putin when that's never been the case. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this because it's the obvious, but holy shit, does he think that his audience is either so dumb or so young that they weren't around for the war in Iraq? He's like, unless he's like, you guys didn't like when we invaded Iraq and in Libya and Afghanistan and all those countries that we invaded, right? Y'all didn't like that. So of course you agree that we shouldn't allow Russia to do that. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's so bad, bro.
In your case before the Security Council yesterday, you added that Russia's committing war crimes, engaging in nuclear saber rattling, weaponizing hunger, now cooperating with North Korea in the war effort.
Weaponizing hunger.
It's a case you've made many times over the last year and a half. Is it your sense that the people who need to hear that message?
I'm not gonna stop it. There's just so many lies
are they
to look
willing
at
to
once.
Do anything about it?
So much.
Well, I think it's really important that we keep coming back, not just to the strong interest that we have in supporting Ukraine with all these other countries, but also the human dimension, because it's easy from so far away or in a conference room to lose sight of that. We're talking big policy issues. I was just in Ukraine for the 4th time since the Russian aggression, and Andrea's been there so many times as well. We went to a small town, Yehidny. It's about 2.5 hours drive outside of Kyiv, and went there. And when the Russians came in 18 months ago, they took over this town. They herded up all of the residents, just a few hundred people. They took them to the schoolhouse. They put them in a basement unfit for human habitation. They had their command post on the ground floor, and they basically put people there as human shields. And it was elderly people, it was women, it was children.
Pause that shit. So hold up. So they took them into a basement that supposedly isn't good for human living conditions, which is a different thing. But how the fuck do you use somebody as human shield when they're in the basement? I don't think militarily or strategically speaking, that's how human shields work. Like, that is a really piss poor shield if the shield's not even in front of bullets.
So what they've been doing in Ukraine is essentially projecting their war crimes. They talk about stuff that they did in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they said Russia is doing that. Like they will say stuff like Russia is using sexual violence against the Ukrainian population. Oh, you mean the thing the United States soldiers did in Afghanistan and Iraq? Absolutely. Don't make up shit that you guys did and put it on Russia.
Hey, nuclear saber rattling, like we didn't just see headlines where they like, yeah, we're about to send some nuclear tipped uranium.
Yes. Biden sent nuclear submarines to fucking Australia and South Korea. But anyway,
but we literally there were headlines of nuclear tipped uranium. It's like, does he not read the news before he goes on the news, or he just really, really hoping it's like y'all said. Morning Joe's a propaganda machine. That's where everybody. So his job right now is to say the lie so that everyone else repeats it, so that no one goes back and verifies that it's a lie. Because if everyone's agreeing on mainstream media in the minds of the average person, then it must be true.
Vladimir Putin has shown no interest in actually coming up with a meaningful diplomatic settlement.
Oh my.
Mr. Secretary, I was at an event last night where President Zelensky was awarded and gave a speech, and it's so compelling in person. Are you counting on him in person to Congress? Because a new letter today has enough House and Senate members to block the aid, and they're still saying they're going to refuse.
I think we all know, we've all heard him many times. President Zelensky is incredibly compelling. He's a terrific communicator.
Which Zelensky are they seeing? Because the one they tried it out, I don't know what they talking about. He is not compelling. What? So you talking about the one with the Clint Eastwood voice, who's always in military costume? You talking about like he can't wear a suit? How many times he's been?
The one that they had
y'all can't put him in a suit.
Ukrainian media had to edit the crowd, so that it looked like there were more people. Remember, like, did y'all see that post? They had to edit the crowd so it looked like there were more people.
But they fucked
up. Yeah, but they fucked up because Zelensky is in the crowd of people that they edited during his speech. Yeah.
We got to play that.
Go ahead, Nick.
We definitely got to play that video. And do you guys know that Biden met with Zelensky, and there were so many leaks and inside reporting that Biden hated the motherfucker? Like they had this infamous first meeting where Biden was like, "Man, fuck this dude is a fucking."
But that makes sense though. Zelensky tried to work with Trump. Like this is before the impeachment. He tried to work with Trump to expose Joe Biden's entire like corruption scandal with him and Hunter Biden and Burisma and Tony Podesta, like all that stuff. John Podesta, excuse me. Like all that shit that happened. Zelensky was trying before Biden became president, before he even announced, he was trying to clear those people out because he knew it was only a matter of time that if a Democrat takes back over, he knew what time it was. Zelensky never liked Biden, and Biden never liked Zelensky because Zelensky campaigned on getting all the corruption out of Ukraine that Biden had helped put into place. And so that's what I was going to ask. He's Anthony Blinken, like, I've been to Ukraine 4 times. How many times Biden been?
Yeah, let's continue.
Interesting.
Right here.
And other countries can really get behind. And that means basically getting to a point where Ukraine is standing on its own 2 feet, militarily, economically, democratically.
That's not going to happen.
Got 30 countries working on that right now.
Mr. Secretary, there seems to be kind of 2 conversations happening in New York this week.
It's our goal for Ukraine to get on its feet economically. No, it's not. Guys, you know who owns Ukraine now? BlackRock. Ukraine,
like everything else,
is going to be owned by the West because of these loans, fam. So that's a lie. But I'll let it continue because there's so much.
We're hoping that
let's play a little bit more.
I'll keep it short. I can debunk everything he says. So let's continue.
Week with the conversation we're having around the table at the moment, which is about Ukraine, but a lot of countries from what you might call the global south saying, hold on a second, this is a priority that is led by America and European countries, but we're actually much more focused on issues like climate change and the inequity around climate change and the degree to which we're suffering. How much are you trying to reach out to those countries, not just on Ukraine, but say, listen, we do hear you, and the expansion of the BRICS, the G20, they have a sort of sense of momentum.
That's the only good question I ever heard from
and a feeling that perhaps America is ignoring their.
Yeah, that's why I fast forwarded to it. Go ahead.
That's actually a good question. That's a rare good. He gonna bullshit it, and obviously she asked it with no confrontation.
Look at his face. Look at his face. Look at his face.
That's a good question.
Did you just ask me that? Did you just ask me that?
No, to your point, Niko, and I said this in another segment, Nick. I don't know if you remember me saying this, but this particular person, this lady from the UK, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but she does this a lot where she'll insert a question. I'm not sure she knows that's not really a good propaganda question to ask. And it could be a cultural thing that she's not getting. And I notice every now and then she'll do that. And this is another one. But let's get back to the video because we got 8 minutes left in the stream.
Climate change and the inequity around climate change and the degree to which we're suffering. How much are you trying to reach out to those countries, not just on Ukraine, but say, listen, we do hear you, and the expansion of the BRICS, the G20, they have a sort of sense of momentum about them. And a feeling that perhaps America is ignoring their agendas.
So, Cuddy, I think if you had an opportunity to listen to the president speak to this, to the General Assembly, 2/3, 3/4 of his speech was exactly on those issues, the issues directly of concern to people around the globe. And he made the case that we need, as an international community, to focus on them. He made the case that the United States is by far the leading contributor to all of these efforts, whether it's on climate, whether it's on food security, whether it's on building better infrastructure.
I got to let it play, but he is lying.
Right way, whether it's dealing with global health, all of the issues that people care about around the world, we are the #1 provider. And it's a false choice to say it's either Ukraine.
He is right, guys. We are the #1 provider of all the problems.
He's absolutely right. I heard after the president spoke, just talking to a lot of my counterparts from around the world, was deep appreciation for the focus that he brought to these issues and appreciation for the fact that the United States is leading on them.
Mr. Secretary, you mentioned a few
Of
moments
course, he doesn't answer the question.
Yeah,
and we got to cut it there and just get final thoughts because I got a hard out in like 8 minutes. But go ahead, Nick. You had a lot to say. I know you wanted to chime in a lot on that particular question. Go ahead, sir.
There's so much to say because the question he's talking about Lula, by the way, because Lula has been one of the close U.S. partners that have been very critical of the U.S. war. And Lula, he get a lot of criticism for this, but he still maintained a statesman-like approach to the U.S. where he still want to have a good friendship with them because he's part of the hemisphere of the largest superpower. So he just had a meeting with Biden not too long ago where Biden famously forgot to shake his hand. But Lula's been a big critic of this. The majority of the world population is against the Ukraine war. So Caddy K accidentally asked a good question where he like, what's your response to this? You keep saying that the world is united behind Putin, but that's not the case. Look at BRICS. BRICS is expanding. You have South Africa. You have many countries that called out the ICC in favor of Putin. So this is not true. And Blinken, because that's such a checkmate, he doesn't answer the question, which is essentially wave the white flag because there's no legitimate answer to this. You guys are waging a losing campaign, not only on the battlefield, but in terms of PR, in terms of who winning the PR battle. I covered this months and months ago where they had a poll that was dismayed over the fact that Chinese propaganda and Russian propaganda was more influential than United States propaganda because most of the world sees through the United States lie. They live through the bullshit and they see through it. I want to find the video. I'm looking for it now. I'll pass to you, Niko, but I want to show the video with Zelensky. The video edit. I think we got.
Not the belly dancing one. Go ahead, Niko.
No, here it is.
Before we break, go ahead.
Go ahead, Niko. This is the video you mentioned, Niko. This is what I want to share. Please. I want to do a segment on it, but I think this is gonna be a short, funny segment. And this is why you should never trust Ukrainian propaganda ever. And what our media does, they take what the Ukrainian government says, Ukrainian media says, and they print it at face value. Oh, there are war crimes over here, said the Ukrainian government, right? But anyway, this is another example how Zelensky is losing clout in the United States, but they can't tell that narrative in Ukraine. So I want you guys to watch this video and see if you see anything weird in the crowd.
Не розгортати цю зброю, не розповсюджувати, не допускати погрози нею, не допускати тренування для того, щоб забезпечити ядерне роззброєння. І це хороша стратегія. Але
Hold up.
Wait.
Hold up.
Who's that?
Who's that?
Bro. And he don't look entertained by his own speech. That's the crazy part.
This motherfucker is so motivated. He spawned a shadow clone. Like he's a shadow clone. And like he caught the Holy Ghost in the way we never heard before. Himself, he became an audience. He was so moved by this.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot to unpack. First of all, when she asked that question, clearly he did not get the memo that question was going to be asked. And perhaps I don't know if she just was like, "Oh, I'm a journalist. This is what I do." So like, I didn't think that this would be a problem. But his response when he said, "Oh, the U.S. is number one in solving these problems," bro, her face was like,
like what?
She's like, "You must forgot. I'm not fucking come here. That's a guy." Because I'm about to hop right over the pond, as they always say, and enjoy some of this free health care that y'all definitely ain't got. So, like, I know you ain't talking about.
Do you think that's why, Niko? Do you think that's why she's more candid in her critique? Because you got to remember, she represents Europe that has been protesting NATO, that's receiving the brunt of these sanctions. So, do you think that's why she's able to ask a little bit more, like, more substantive questions? Go ahead.
She can't ignore what she's seeing, what she's personally experiencing. It's different in America. People are protesting or against Ukraine online, or they just don't really care. But in Europe, they feel the impacts of it more than we do, or more than people in the US do. Their gas has been high. their oil has been higher. Their agriculture, like everything has been much higher. There is an actively negative sentiment towards the UK and the EU giving all this money to Ukraine and not doing anything to facilitate peace talks. Like, so, and she's obviously fully aware, like, this BRIC situation is serious because even though obviously most of Western Europe is a part of NATO in some way, form, or fashion, Eastern Europe has no such loyalty for the most part, and they're going to go where they feel they can be best treated. She's like, you know, British people are not stupid. Like, there's some who are propagandized, but a lot of them are still at least willing to call a spade, which I feel like is one, why she asked that question. Two, why I think it wasn't a prepared question. Like, I don't think that he got it in advance, which is why his answer seems so much more unprepared and reactionary and just really uncomfortable, because he actually said multiple times, which is probably a Freudian slip. He's like, yeah, we're leading in those problems. He actually said that multiple times.
Yeah, he did.
That was ridiculous. He said healthcare, we're leading. I'm like, what?
Yeah.